Hi there, I'm Tomix, and I wanted to talk to you about Tycoon games. Tycoon games, as many of you know, are games where you build and manage something. It can be something like a business, a restaurant, a shop, etc. It can be something like a city or an amusement park or basically anything. Tycoon games started being popular in the 90s after games like Transport Tycoon and SimCity and eventually Roller Coaster Tycoon really put them on the map. They gave rise to companies like Bullfrog and Maxis that created all these amazing games where you build or manage something. With several games like SimCity or Transport Tycoon making it big on the market, suddenly the build and manage genre experienced this whole explosion of new games coming out to the market. Some of them were really good and we still remember and love them to this day, like Roller Coaster Tycoon. Some were underrated gems that I feel kind of got lost in the sands of time, and some were just not quite there even back when they came out. In fact, Tycoon games, and I'm also including sim games in this category for the sake of this video, Tycoon games became so popular that they even had spin-off games. Like, SimCity had Streets of SimCity and Simcopter that let you drive around or fly around in a helicopter in cities that you built and complete missions and stuff. That's amazing. We've not really seen that since. Sure, SimCity 4 Deluxe had little missions where you could drive around and do missions, but it wasn't 3D. You weren't in your own city the way you were in Streets of SimCity or Simcopter. The Tycoon genre was exploding, and it really reached a high point with the creation of The Sims, the life simulator. The Sims was huge when it came out. I still remember playing SimCity and seeing like a little trailer for The Sims, and it sounded mysterious and intriguing, and then it came out and it exploded. Games where you build, manage, control, micromanage, enjoy were everywhere. And then piracy happened. Piracy was always around, but with the internet becoming more commonplace and file sharing becoming a little better, games started being downloaded illegally. This really harmed the video game companies. And as a result, we've seen many of the studios we love either have to deal with cutbacks or close altogether as they were losing money over their games that were not selling as well as they should have because people were just downloading them. A lot of companies decide to try to deal with this by moving their focus from PC gaming to console gaming. They would still develop games, but they would either not release them on the PC or they would focus more on trying to gain profit for them from console gaming. But this was a problem for certain genres of games. Little indie games or tycoon games could not really make that move to console. It was just not as easy building an amusement park or a city using console controllers and when you could have used your keyboard and mouse that gave you so much more control over what you were doing. The sales of Tycoon games took a massive hit, and a lot of studios either went in a different direction, closed, or got bought out by other companies. And that's how we lost Maxis, which made so many amazing Tycoon titles over the years, and some less amazing ones. This was a huge hit for Tycoon games everywhere, and it was the end of the golden era of Tycoon games. Pretty much the only franchise to make it out of that crash alive was The Sims, and possibly the Tropico series, which to be fair I wasn't into at the time, even though I really got into it later. The Sims was a monster at that point. It was extremely popular. Every game had a bajillion expansion packs. And on one hand, people were complaining like, okay, come on, they're just like ringing us for money at this point. But you know what? The game survived. Yeah, maybe it didn't need like 15 frickin' expansion packs for one game, but it survived. It managed to keep build and manage games kind of alive when none of the other games were around anymore. But of course, to those of us who really loved games like SimCity and Roller Coaster Tycoon, this was not enough. We wanted the old games we used to enjoy, but there was no way for them to be able to make it on PC, not with pirating still around. And for, I want to say, like 7 to 9 years, we really had nothing else to play. After Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 and SimCity 4 Deluxe came out, we went into this insane dry spell where nothing came out. Okay, that's not entirely accurate. A few Tycoon games did come out during this time period, most notably in the Anno series or the Tropico series. But for the most part, the games that were coming out were few and far between and had very little in common with the Sim and Tycoon games that we knew and loved. Small indie publishers either could not make Tycoon games, or the ones they made were a little too low budget, etc., to really be good or memorable games during this time period. The only real attempt at bringing Tycoon games back during this dry spell was with SimCity trying to reboot itself repeatedly in various different ways, the most memorable of which was SimCity Societies, a game that was widely regarded as the worst SimCity game. I mean, sure, there's like mobile games and stuff like that we won't get into that technically have the SimCity title on them, but as far as, you know, big PC titles with the name SimCity on them that were heralded as part of the SimCity franchise, this one was completely different. I think maybe they were trying to appeal to a new audience that didn't grow up playing SimCity, and they tried to mix up the formula because the formula had died a decade ago. And as a result, they created a game that nobody asked for. It was whimsical, and all the buildings had themes, because, you know, when you build a city, you want it to look like a cartoon. You don't want to feel like you're God building frickin' skyscrapers out of the dirt. No, you want to, I don't know, put down houses that look like clowns. Because it worked so well for SimTown when they did it back in the 90s, right? We all remember that game. No, just me? It was basically a modern version of SimTown, a game where you plop down buildings instead of letting your city grow organically, and where they all have funny little themes to go along with whatever you felt like building. You want to do something kooky, do something kooky. You want to do something normal, do something kooky anyway. And by trying to turn to a new market this way, they didn't. People who grew up loving the SimCity franchise for what it was could not find their appeal in this game. And whatever new players came in to try and play this game completely missed out on what made the originals great. And so, with the relative failure of SimCity Societies, it seemed to the big companies like there was no point really reviving this genre. People weren't buying it, which means people just aren't looking for this. It's not that we made a bad product that people weren't looking for. No, it's just a dead genre. I mean, obviously I'm kind of assuming what the thought process was. I wasn't there. I don't know what made them do the things they did, but it just seems like this was the case. But right as you thought everything was dead, a new city sim came out that was making small ripples in the water. It was called City Life. In City Life, you would build a city, and it was a pretty good simulator game as far as city building goes. It had its issues, and it wasn't everything that a city builder fan looks for in a game. The game had a weird obsession with classism, though, as in classes of society. You had have-nots, fringes, radical sheiks, elites, suits, and blue collars. And they were very particular about who they were willing to live next to. It was an interesting attempt, but it kind of took it away from being a real city builder and a little closer to SimCity Societies than what people were looking for, where you weren't just letting a city grow organically, but you were managing some arbitrary thing about where everything is located. It was a step in the right direction, but it wasn't quite there yet. But riding on the relative success of that in a market that was otherwise starving for a game like this, Monte Cristo announced their next project, Cities XL. Cities XL was going to do what we've been waiting for. It was going to be the next big city builder, the one that was going to put Tycoon games on the map and maybe herald a new age of Tycoon and city building games. They had a website up with a forum, and they were very active in that forum, listening to their community, asking them what they want to see in a city building game. And they were promising a lot. I was in that forum. I remember exactly how excited we were whenever we'd hear about a new feature that people were requesting, and they said it would be there. You guys want maglev trains? Sure, you got that. You guys want buildings that can pop up in lots of any size or shape? You got that. And the promises were starting to stack up pretty high. We were all psyched. These people had experience with making city building games, and this was going to be the first big game to bring back city builders since the death of SimCity. But as soon as promotional material started coming out, the game looked very little like what we were promised. So many of the features we were told would be in the game were nowhere to be seen in the trailers or the screenshots. Some people were still optimistic, hoping that maybe these things would be put into the game before release, but as time went on, it became apparent that that was not going to happen. Cities XL was promising far more than it could provide. And then the biggest and strangest twist happened. It released with online multiplayer? Who even asked for that? Online multiplayer in a city builder? This was supposed to encourage you to trade between cities or something, but this was not one of the key features people were looking for. And you had to play online? What about all the features we were promised, like being able to manage ski resorts and beach resorts, or all of the crazy transportation things we were told were going to be in the game and were nowhere to be seen? Did you scrap all those to work on a feature none of us asked for? The game came out and it crashed and burned. A game that had a huge following and so much hype and so many people excited to play it failed immediately. It bankrupted the company pretty much as soon as it came out. They saw how people were just not responding to the online play at all, or to all the missing features. They tried to do whatever they could. They made offline play possible, but it was too late. The game was sinking fast. This was not going to be the start of the next big revival of the Tycoons. Or was it? That came from a different direction right around this time. But we'll discuss that on my next video. See you there.